no film is without its critiques. Here are some points that might be considered flaws or missed opportunities regarding the design and architecture in Dune. 1. Overly sterile aesthetic. Some critics argue that the overall aesthetic of Dune is too cold and sterile, especially in comparison to the rich, textured world building of the book. The minimalist, brutalist architecture of the film emphasizes scale and power, but lacks the warmth or organic feel that could have made the world feel more lived in. For example, the interiors of buildings, particularly on Arrakis, often feel more like corporate lobbies than homes or spaces where people interact with the environment. 2. Lack of cultural expression. The architecture in Dune leans heavily into grand monolithic structures, but there's very little in the way of ornamentation or details that convey the rich cultures of the various groups in the universe. For instance, the Fremen, a nomadic desert people, have an architecture that is practical, but it's largely hidden underground and doesn't offer a sense of their culture's identity beyond survival. Some fans feel that this could have been a great opportunity to show more about their way of life visually. 3. Monotone color palette. The film's architecture often blends into the environment, which can be effective for world building, but in Dune, it sometimes leads to a lack of visual contrast. The sand-colored, muted palette used for buildings in Arrakis can make them feel drab or indistinguishable from the desert landscape. While it emphasizes the harshness of the world, it doesn't always make for the most engaging or varied visual experience. 4. Lack of detail in vernacular architecture. The film focuses on massive, imposing structures like the Harkonnen Palace and the Atreides Fortress, but there's little attention given to the smaller, everyday architecture of the world. There's a missed opportunity to show how the common people of Arrakis live, how they adapt to the harsh climate, and what kinds of materials or designs they use to survive. This could have provided more depth and texture to the world, but instead, much of the architecture feels generic and utilitarian. 5. Inconsistent scale and spatial logic. While the monumental scale of the structures in Dune is impressive, the sheer size of the buildings can sometimes feel overwhelming and impractical. The vast, empty spaces inside palaces and fortresses can feel disconnected from reality, as if the spaces are designed more for aesthetic effect than practical living. This can detract from the believability of the world, making the viewer question how such enormous structures are maintained or used on a day-to-day basis. 6. Overemphasis on brutalism. The brutalist style in Dune makes sense thematically, harsh, unforgiving, and reflective of the struggles on Arrakis, but it can also feel repetitive. Almost every structure in the film follows this brutalist monolithic aesthetic, which can become visually monotonous after a while. There's little variation in architectural style between the planets, even though different cultures and environments could have influenced more diversity in design. 7. Underutilization of technology. For a sci-fi film set in a distant future, the architecture in Dune is surprisingly low-tech in appearance. There are very few visual cues that suggest advanced technology beyond spaceships and shield generators. The buildings, while massive and awe-inspiring, often look like ancient structures rather than the product of advanced engineering or technology. Some fans feel that a more futuristic or innovative approach to architecture could have better conveyed the advanced state of the universe. 8. Missed opportunity with Harkonnen aesthetic. The Harkonnen aesthetic, especially in the scenes on Gaedi Prime, feels dark and imposing, but some viewers felt that it lacked depth or complexity. The stark black industrial look of their architecture might come off as a bit cliched for a villainous faction in science fiction, and there was potential to explore more unsettling or unique design elements to reflect their sadistic, corrupt nature. While these points don't detract significantly from the overall impact of Dune, they highlight how the design could have pushed further into the richness of the world and the complexity of its cultures. The film excels in its visual grandeur, but the architecture may feel too detached or underdeveloped for some viewers. For all the good features of Dune's architecture and design, you can check out this video.